With work environment too, your values need to be at least aligned in some way with the organization. And the organization's values cannot smush yours. There's gonna be dysfunction and you're gonna be upset if that's the case. So you need to consider that. And
no value smushing.
No value smushing. That's the technical term.
Smushing. That is a technical term.
It is. Okay.
I've heard that before. This is the Brandon Smith Show, and I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of the show is one singular thing, and that is to help you live a life that much more free from dysfunction. So our show today, we're going to take on something that I think is probably very true for most people listening to this, likely, career itchiness. So you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I'm feeling a little itchy in my job, feeling a little itchy in my career, something, I want to make a change. And so to help us kind of guide us on this journey, I have an amazing guest here to help us, an expert in career guidance, career strategizing, Hallie Crawford. Hallie, so good to have you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I am thrilled about this conversation. So just to introduce you to all my guests, you're both a certified career coach and founder of HallieCrawford.com.
Yes.
Where you've been doing this for quite some time, helping people navigate that career itchiness.
Absolutely.
So maybe before we jump into some of the things people need to be thinking about, tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into this? And what are some of the things that you do today to help people?
Well, first of all, I'm going to steal your career itchiness word, if that's okay. We can talk about that later because that's a perfect way to describe it. So I've been doing this for 18 years. I absolutely love it. I feel like it's my purpose in life and it's my passion. And I started out working in a marketing job at a university that I just hated. And there was a point, honestly, where closer to the end, right before I left that position, I was crying in the bathroom. I mean, almost every day. It was one of those things where it was too stressful. It wasn't a fit. It wasn't the right work environment. And honestly, I worked for a boss that was so tough, so difficult and demanding that's part of why I just felt like I couldn't measure up.
So job wasn't a fit, the culture wasn't a fit, and the boss wasn't a good fit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's rough.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, I remember, when I interviewed for that job several years before, I remember thinking, this job is not going to be a fit for me. I knew that the person I was going to work for was going to be tough. And second, honestly, too, I had to wear pantyhose for that job, and I hate wearing pantyhose. I grew up in Florida, and pantyhose is just not my thing because it was one of those, it was like in development where I had to look the part, right? So I knew it wasn't going to be the right thing, but what did I say when they offered it? I said yes. I needed to pay my bills and my graduate school loans. So I
have a feeling a lot of people listening to this story are nodding their head like, she's telling my story.
Yeah.
Like she is telling my story.
Exactly. Like sometimes we know better. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's a gut instinct or whatever it is. But for whatever reason, understandably, we just take it. And then years later, we'll look back and say, well, wait, what happened? And nobody takes a job thinking they're going to hate it, right? Like I knew in the back of my mind, okay, there's these couple of things, but we talk ourselves into it, right? And just say, okay, well, maybe I can make it work or I have to take it for this reason. So that happens to so many people. It's completely normal. But then we look back and say, okay, there's all these things that aren't a fit for me, but some of it may be appealing and I'm so confused and they become itchy, like you're saying, right? So we choose our paths, professionally for a reason. But, when I work with clients, there's 8 things that they need to consider in order to know the right career path. And what happens to a lot of people, understandably, is they choose a career or profession based on maybe 2 of those pieces. And then that's why they get confused later on because they're like, well, wait a minute, this stuff works over here, but this stuff doesn't. Now, how do I figure that out? And it's kind of like totally confusing for them. You know?
Yeah, it makes total sense. So we're going to talk about the 8 things because we have to talk about the 8 things. But do you need all 8?
You do.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, you really do. And it's a great question because you have to have all 8 considered. You can kind of prioritize them a little bit. And just so you know, and everyone knows too, that we all compromise to a certain extent in our jobs. It isn't like, oh, wave this magic wand and it's Pollyanna and it's perfect every day. there are always going to be things, as you know, that we do have to compromise on a little bit. But the idea is that we choose where we're compromising. We consider all of these 8 things. And then we're choosing where we're compromising versus getting sucked into it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how I feel about what I do. Of course, there are certain things about my business, financial spreadsheets, Excel, not my thing. Right. But that's a small part of what I do. And so I barely notice that tough kind of bad stuff that I don't like as much.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do with our clients is help them, find like the good so far outweighs the bad that they barely notice that difficult stuff.
I totally get it. I just hearing you say that, I had a flashback to last night sitting in my kitchen, my wife and my daughter, I don't know where my boys were, and I threw a temper tantrum because I had to do one of those things I didn't want to do.
Yes.
I had to fill out a vendor form for for a very large corporate client. And if you've ever filled out vendor forms for large corporate clients,
yes.
It's like speaking another language.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's typically based in another country and you got to fill out, I log in the system. Immediately they say, you need to complete the next 15 forms. I was like, no.
I know.
I immediately just stood up and I said, I can't do this right here. I have to go to my office. And I just stormed downstairs. Luckily, it took 30 minutes and that was my pain for the day.
Right.
And the rest of the day was okay.
Yeah.
But there are things that we have, all of us have,
right,
that, we wish we didn't have. But if the good outweighs the bad,
then it's okay.
And
we can manage it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like what your tolerance level is too. For me, the risk of, which I'm sure you understand as well, the risk of having your own company and your own business, that can be hard for some people. And there's plenty of people out there that are like, no, I don't want to do that. I can't tolerate it. But one of my values actually is risk. When you look at, the things I'm interested in my life as well as in my career, I love horseback riding, I love snow skiing. And yes, part of that is, being outside, etc. But there's that element of kind of pushing the limit a little bit. Like I like to go fast on the horse in snow skiing. So that's where you have to think about, that's one of the first things actually we have our clients look at is what are their values and how can those be present in their career.
Nice.
In their personal life, yeah.
Beautiful. I think that's a perfect segue to our 8 things we need to be thinking about.
Okay, perfect.
So, let's start with whatever number 1 is.
Okay, so number 1 is actually that one. So
nice.
We start with fulfillment and suggest that to professionals who are feeling itchy because what we found is if you look at and start to define what fulfillment and success and accomplishment, what it means to you now in your life, it could be different from when you started out in your career.
Such a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
And those values can kind of adjust or shift maybe in priority or even if they're the same, how you define them. And we have found also that if they look at fulfillment first and try to decide what would give me meaning in my career now at this point in my life, that's going to help them kind of brainstorm alternative career ideas and be more creative and think outside the box. And the reason why I think that's so important to do in this day and age, especially, is there's so many jobs out there that we don't even know exist. And there's no one website that says, okay, here's all the jobs out there, right? So I really want people to think about, their values and their career values specifically and define what's rewarding and fulfilling first, because they're going to get a lot more career ideas from thinking about that versus, for example, just going right to your strengths, and then I need to get paid this much. I mean, sorry, but those 2 things are important, but they're boring. So just looking at those 2 things isn't going to give you that, what's going to get me jazzed and want to go to work in the morning and be okay with, the stress that's there and be able to work around that because I feel really passionately about it. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. So really getting them to start thinking about and defining what does fulfillment mean to you in this particular season of your career?
Exactly.
And maybe even life a little bit. That might play into it too.
It totally does. And what we do, just by the way, is it plays into that, is we have them define their personal values first as a person. Because if they start to think about their career values first, a lot of times people will pick things that they feel like they should, like, okay, I should put down family. I should put down, accomplishment or whatever it is.
Ambition.
Yeah, exactly.
Drive.
Motivation. Yeah, all that stuff that you talk about all the time. Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with those things, but you can't put down things that you should, that you feel like you have to or are supposed to because of society or whatever else. So we actually have them identify and write about and tell a friend or family member about a peak experience in their life. And we have them do something that's personal instead of professional to start. Because then that other person, and I'm sure you know how to do this, is they can start to pull out what that person's values are, what your values are from that story.
Beautiful. So you're really kind of getting at who they really are so you can find the right fit.
Yeah.
Okay, so number one is trying to hone in on what does fulfillment mean and look like for us now.
Exactly.
How about number two?
Number two is thinking about what would be kind of icing on the cake for you in terms of enjoyment, in terms of your career. So I'll give you an example, and this is how this works, is the marketing job that I had before.
Yeah.
I actually really do like marketing. And I had to write a lot in that job as well. I actually do like doing that too, and editing articles and being creative in that way. But guess what? I don't want to do that all day long. That's the problem. I can be a coach and help people with, what we're talking about today all day long because I don't get sick of it. That is it's closer to my career values, my top two. That authenticity is another value for me.
Yeah.
And the marketing and writing and all of that, hey, I get to do that now with my business, but it's a percentage of what I do. So the other thing, the second thing that people need to do is identify what their enjoyable tasks are, but think of their career as like a pie. What's the big piece of the pie? What do you like to be doing or want to be doing the majority of the time? What's your role? And then what are the other kind of fun things that you can incorporate into that? Because that will help you narrow down your ideas.
I love that.
Okay.
So it's not thinking about like one or the other. It's thinking about the right percentage mix.
Yes.
So I might do this just for a little bit and then I'll try that a little bit more. Got it.
Yeah, because that's where, some people will come to us and when they're frustrated and they'll be like, well, gosh, I have this strength, but I'm kind of sick of doing that. It doesn't, I'm not as rewarded anymore or not as challenged, and they need to adjust the percentage. So you really do need to think about, in terms of the enjoyment, what are the tasks that you want to perform or what role do you want to play? What's the main one and what are the rest?
You know what I love about that? That's so empowering. I think I wouldn't have thought of is often when I hear people say, I don't want to do this anymore. I go, okay, well, let's go find something else, or you should go find something else different. Mm-hmm. But what you're saying is, no, wait, let's don't completely throw it out.
Yeah.
Let's maybe just find a way to dial it back.
Yes.
And then when you do that, you can still leverage it to find another job.
Yep.
Because naturally people want to hire people that have already done that job before.
Exactly.
So you might find a way to dial it back to, instead of 80% of the time, you're only doing it 30% of the time and you're doing other stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it could be more of a course correction. So it could be something different, like you're saying, but it's not suddenly dentist to circus clown or, whatever it is, right? It's something
Although I'd like to see that actually.
I know. Wouldn't that be amazing? I have not had that example. I'll work on it. I'll get back to you. That, it can be a slight course correction where they're leveraging their experience, but maybe they're just at the wrong company doing the right thing. We've had that a lot. Maybe they're an external consultant working for Arthur Andersen or, whatever it is, but they'd rather be like an internal consultant and do like business development or strategy within one company. So sometimes that's why the model is so helpful, that it can be a course correction versus something completely different. It depends on the situation and the person, but also some people can stay at their organization and just switch to a different role or even adjust their current job to a certain extent.
I love that. I like it. It's much more of a, as a good mentor of mine would say, rather than being a light switch, it's more like a dimmer switch.
Yes.
Which I think is a great kind of image. Makes it more freeing, gives us more flexibility and opportunities and options.
It does.
Okay, so we are moving into break. So when we come back from break, I get to hear number 3.
Okay, good.
Okay, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Here's your coaching minute for the week, presented to you by the Leadership Foundry. Dysfunction in the workplace, it's a pervasive problem. Here's a simple tip to eliminate dysfunction, both in your team, but even in the environments around you. Clarify your team members' roles, goals, and responsibilities. So just spend some time thinking about, does all of my team know? Does each of them know what their role is, what the goals are of the team, and their responsibilities? If the answer is yes, you right there eliminate 50% of all the dysfunction that could come up in your team. If the answer is no, think about how you could do that better. When we don't do that, one of two things happens. Either people overlap work and they step on each other's toes, or you have one person carrying much bigger load while a couple other people are hanging out not doing near as much work. It's one of the big problems in the nonprofit world is a lack of clarity around roles, goals, and responsibilities. So focus on those three things, and I promise you, not only will you eliminate dysfunction, it's going to make your workplace that much more enjoyable. Welcome back to the Brandon Smith Show. Of course, I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and our show today, we're talking about career itchiness. So, Hallie, right before the break, we talked about kind of the 8 things that you guide your clients through that are suffering from career itchiness.
Yep.
Which is, I think, an illness we've probably all suffered from at some point in our lives. Mm-hmm. We talked about the first 2.
Right.
We talked about kind of defining fulfillment for you today in the season of life you're in today. And we talked about kind of identifying the things that you get enjoyment out of.
Right.
And modulating in those things so you're having the right percentage mix. Mm-hmm. What's number 3?
Number 3 is understanding and leveraging your strengths. And this goes into when you actually start to look for a new job, right? So one of the things we have to do at this point as well is know what your top 5 strengths are and how they play into the workplace in general, whether it's at your current job or, gives you ideas in addition for other things that you could do. One of the assessments that we really like is the StrengthsFinder.com assessment.
Yeah.
Just because it's affordable, it's like $20. It's easy to digest and understand, and it gives you your top 5 strengths, but it also gives you language you can use when you start to go out there and network and talk with people. So we really like that. And obviously, studies have shown that if you're not leveraging your strengths at work, you're not going to be fulfilled. So it plays into that fulfillment piece as well.
Nice.
Yeah. You need to be leveraging your strengths on a regular basis at your job. So you have to know what they are first to then say, okay, what's the role that's going to use those?
So nice. We talked about fulfillment, the stuff that I enjoy, gives me energy, and then the stuff that I'm good at.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, we got a pretty good inventory of stuff so far.
Yeah. And all of them, you have to consider all of them. Like we said, they have to play into it. So if you're starting to look out there at possible jobs and brainstorming ideas, you need to write these down and make sure that they will, it's like a checklist. So you have to say, this job will leverage my strengths on a regular basis. And by the way, the ones that I want to still be using. Because remember how we talked about you might be kind of sick of this one and you want to tone it down a little bit. For me, that happened to a certain extent where I was doing all individual coaching. And now I'm moving into doing some groups and other things too, because you want to flex that other muscle.
Totally.
Yep.
So what's number 4?
Number 4 is education. And so one of the things when we think about, or when we have people, start to brainstorm different ideas, we do actually have them look back at classes that they took in college, even if that was a long time ago. It was for me. Because when I look back at undergraduate courses that I enjoyed, they totally play into what I do. Now, this isn't the case for everybody, but you at least want to take a look and think about, gosh, I really did like that math class or the financial analysis class or whatever it was in college, and think about any classes that you've taken that you've really been jazzed by or drawn to, even if it's like a certification or something professional development. But think about those courses that you have been drawn to or took, because that can give you some ideas or validation about the ideas that you're considering.
Nice. Another way to kind of almost a litmus test on the first 3 things that you've already kind of talked about and identified.
Yeah, and it can help you brainstorm other ideas too, because there might be a couple of clues in there to classes that you've forgotten about that you're like, oh yeah, I did like those.
So we're only halfway through the 8, and it feels like we've already done some really good work.
I know. Sorry, there's a lot.
So what's number 5?
So number 5 is to look at your past experience as well. And here's the deal. When I say experience, absolutely look at professional experience, first. And we actually have people start to write down likes and dislikes from past jobs all the way back to, high school, whatever, and start to identify from that what they would like to have in an ideal career. But the other thing about experience too is to think about like volunteer work or serving on a board or, things that you did when you were younger, because again, there can be clues in there to things that you would enjoy or some of your possible values. But the good part about the experience part is leveraging that work experience and history that you've had already to say, okay, based on these things, what do I know I want to either be different or the same? And you really have to do that inventory, because that helps you get really tangible and specific about the things that you want.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So now we've looked at our both education experiences as well as our other experiences.
Exactly. Yep. It's exhausting. Hopefully we're doing okay.
So that's number 5.
That's number 5.
So we still have 3 more to go.
Yeah, we have 3 more.
So what's 6?
So number 6 is to think about your personality type. This is really critical, and it interplays with the next one too, is work environment, which again, you know a ton about. So in terms of personality type, people need to consider, am I introverted or extroverted? And what blend am I? Because we're all a blend of both, right? And because if you end up in a role, or if you are in a role right now, where if you're more introverted and you're forced to be more extroverted in your job, you're going to be exhausted.
Yeah.
You're going to go home and want to go to bed at 6 o'clock and not have time for the kids or, anything else. And that happened to me a long time ago. I am actually more introverted than extroverted. I'm 60% introvert, 40% extrovert. So I can pose as an extrovert. That's what I say. And I had an extroverted job, and I was exhausted all the time. So your personality type plays into the right work environment, the other people that you want to be around you. It's the work environment, creative or, more traditional or formal, but you have to think about, do I want to be around people a lot, or no, I need more of my alone time. You have to think about whether you're more of a leader and you would like to manage or lead a team, or if you're like, no, I'm okay being number 2 or behind the scenes. So you have to really dive deep into your personality type, because if the environment or the role does not fit with your type, it's not going to work either. And you're going to feel like something is off, but you won't be totally sure what it is.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I was immediately thinking of, people that are maybe introverted and everything looks really good with the job, but it's a kind of a wide open workspace.
Right.
And you're going to be thrown in a big room with everybody else, and you don't really get that personal time or that quiet time. Yeah,
that you need to do the more, detail-oriented work if that's the case. So, and you have to think about it as a percentage, by the way. Remember, we're all not just one or the other. There are some extreme cases. I had a client once who was extremely introverted. Well, he's an interior architect. He loves it. He gets to sit by himself and draw all day. He doesn't like when he goes to meet with clients because he doesn't want to deal with the clients. But again, that's a small percentage of his time compared to the rest that he loves the design work.
Super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's taking us up to our final one.
Well, we have 2 more.
Oh, we have 2 more?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've already lost track. There's so many.
I know. Well, and luckily we have, just by the way, we have an image that's a model that shows people this so that it's not so overwhelming. And it actually really helps them a lot because it's like a checklist.
HallieCrawford.com.
Oh, yes, HallieCrawford.com. Thank you. So the model really helps a lot because then they can see it tangibly. And the deal is that it helps them be objective about the whole thing versus emotional, which is understandable too. So you're actually right. So work environment, just remember though that it's a separate piece and that personality type and work environment interplay. The other thing I want to say about work environment, and then we'll get to the last one, is with work environment too, your values need to be at least aligned in some way with the organization. And the organization's values cannot smush yours. There's going to be dysfunction and you're going to be upset if that's the case. So you need to consider that. And
no value smushing.
No value smushing. That's the technical term.
Smushing. That is a technical term.
It is. Okay.
I've heard that before.
You can coin that if you want, because I'm using your career itchiness. So you're too fun. So the last one is, and this one is really, really important, but you'll notice that we haven't talked about money yet. We haven't talked about compensation.
We haven't talked about money.
And that is a critical piece. It's important. But notice it's the last one.
Last one.
Okay, it's the last one. Because if you just, again, go into practicality too quickly, you're going to cut yourself off at the knees, like with the creative brainstorming that you need to do, like informational interviews, talking with people about the right path and looking online at what's out there. So the compensation is critically important, and you can kind of keep it in the back of your mind from the get-go, but you're not allowed to bring it in until later to kind of fine-tune and hone your ideas.
That makes a lot of sense because there have been cases where I've seen, and I always caution people on this, if you're being thrown a lot of money your way,
yes.
like a lot of money your way, more than you think you should be thrown at for that role,
right?
It's not because you look so great. It's probably because there's something about that job or that organization that's created such a revolving door.
Yeah.
They feel like they've got to overpay
Oh, yeah.
to bring in people.
It's the golden handcuffs.
Yeah. So you got to be real. So I love that you bring that up last. So if we've done all of our homework, then we should have already ruled that out if it's not a good fit.
Exactly. Yep. And you have to consider that. I had a client once who said, it seems like, and she was in a sales role, and that's all I'll say, but she said, it seems like the company kind of knows every time we're getting itchy because they give us a new phone. They give us a new car. They throw something at them. They can kind of tell when people are getting disgruntled, and they throw something at them to keep them around.
Yeah.
And eventually she left because she realized it's the golden handcuffs. It's just keeping her in something that's not a fit.
Yeah. So we're almost moving towards close. So if this is my last question, then we're going to start to kind of land the plane. I can't believe the time's already flying so fast.
Yeah.
So if there's any one or two things that are big no-nos that people shouldn't be doing as they're thinking about overcoming this itchiness, this career itchiness, what are the big no-nos that you see people do? You go, oh yeah, that's not going to help you. That might even hurt you.
Yep. So they push it to the back burner and they settle. So actually I would say one, don't push it to the back burner. I know you've got kids, stuff going on, things going on in your life. We have clients come to us. I joke that, we're like the dentist. We want you to come to us for a cleaning, not a root canal. So it's much better to come to us proactively when you're starting to feel itchy versus have a full-on rash, so we can help you at that point. Because too many people will say, oh, I've been thinking about this for like 5 years now and I haven't done anything about it. Don't wait until you're in so much pain before you start thinking about these things that we're discussing, because it's going to take some time. So the second thing is give yourself some runway and be patient with the process so that you find something that really will be a good fit. Give it the time that it requires, the thinking and the research to make sure that you go into the right next thing.
Totally unfair question. Are you ready? How much time should we give ourselves?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So with our process in particular, I'm going to say you need to give yourself like a good 4 months, give or take, of really like doing and this is for a busy person who's got a job and maybe a family or whatever else. You give yourself like 3 or 4 months to really think it through and do the research and the brainstorming to narrow down what your ideas are. And then beyond that, the job search definitely can take several more months, obviously, after that. Because
it's a networking and then the relationship building and all that stuff. But then at least you're doing it in a focused way.
Exactly. So without being depressing about it, I mean, you're looking at 8 months to a year, give or take. But when clients come to us and they give us that runway, that feels so good because we can take our time with them really figuring it out. And think about it this way. 8 months compared to the rest of your life. Hello. What's the, big deal. When I look at being happy for 18 years compared to the, year or two, give or take, of getting my coaching practice going and all that, I'd do it again in a heartbeat, even if it was twice as long.
But what I also love about the process is it's not just about career. You're really just getting to understand yourself better.
Exactly.
So you're getting that greater self-awareness and insight into who you are and what you want to do and what you don't want to do and what really matters to you.
Yep.
So at that moment of just, you're getting that out of it too.
Yeah. And ideally people are making life changes as part of it as well.
Yeah. So I ask all my guests this question.
Okay.
So what is one life hack you have for us to help us live a life a little more free from dysfunction? So it can be personal, it can be professional. There's no right or wrong answer.
Can it be the values one?
Sure.
Know and identify what your values are so that if someone walked up to you on the street and said, what are your top 3 values? You could spit it out to them and define it for them exactly. For me, that's been the biggest thing. I have them up on my wall in my office so that I make choices in alignment with them versus
Super cool.
just being subconscious.
Yeah. And I've noticed I've done a version of that exercise, but I need to do it more regularly because I notice like I'm talking about different words these days. It's almost like I've got a couple new favorites that have popped into my list.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I'm really excited about these words.
Yeah. You need to refresh it.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. So you're an absolute gift. This was amazing.
Thank you.
So if people want to learn more about you, about the process, maybe even engage you, where can they go?
They can go to HallieCrawford.com. It's Hallie.
2 L's, Hallie.
Exactly. And then Crawford, like Cindy Crawford.
Okay.
All together, Doesn't have to be caps, all like that.
HallieCrawford.com.
Exactly. And we do career coaching, resume work, all of the stuff that you need for your next career step.
I love that. Amazing. Fantastic. And thank you for listening and watching our show today. Of course, we catch a new show every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. when we drop a new show. And you can watch it on, listen to it on iTunes, or you can watch it on Facebook Live, facebook.com/Brandon Smith WPT for Workplace Therapist. And if you haven't checked out the Workplace Therapist site, go there. It's all resources there just for you. You can Google the Workplace Therapist and you'll find it pretty easily. And if you've enjoyed today's show, and we certainly hope you have, please rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. That's how more folks find us and find the great nuggets like Hallie provided today to help move their careers and make their life a little less dysfunctional and a little healthier. So until our next show, have a great week and an awesome life.